Thank you all for joining us. This is Dan at Unicorn Riot. We got Nico and Alex also helping out today, this afternoon. We are waiting for court to come back, so we're just going to run some clips from earlier this year when these events were sort of unfolding, and we're sort of expecting the judge to come back at any minute, so I just wanted to be ready, have the systems up and running. So thank you all for joining us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter. We really appreciate that. Please keep the chats respectful. We really appreciate that. So we're just waiting for things to come back. Earlier today, we were hearing from the Hennepin County Medical Examiner, investigators at the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, who were sort of walking through the forensics of what was happening. There was a lot of legal maneuvering because the defense is trying to keep certain photos out of evidence, certain sort of aspects of sort of walking through what happened out of evidence, out of being presented to the jury. So there was a lot of that. There was a lot of sort of talking that we couldn't hear that was excluded sort of out of the picture. So so that is going on. Excuse me. So we're just going to be running some clips from when this all happened, and we will bring it back to court as soon as it goes live. Thank you all for joining us, and please stay tuned. We really appreciate it.
They killed my brother for nothing. He had no weapons on him. I'm confused. Why do we keep living like this? Why do they keep killing us? I keep asking. Why I gotta live through, I gotta be scared too. Everybody gotta be scared. Cause look what they doing to us. This is too sad. I can't believe what the world has turned into. This is crazy. It's tiring. We're getting tired, but we gotta keep fighting until we get what we deserve.
Can you talk about your brother?
What do y'all wanna know?
What kind of person was he? What's your favorite memories?
He is so goofy. Like he just makes everybody happy. Like if you see anybody sad, he'll come to you and make you so happy. And that's just, they took my brother away from me. And y'all don't understand, like I'm so hurt. They really just took him. I still can't believe it. I still keep thinking I'm finna go home and see him. No, they took my brother from me. And it really hurts, it really does.
When's the last time you saw him?
The last time I saw him was a week ago. The last time I saw him, it was a week ago.
Did you think it would be the last time?
No, I never would think that. I always make sure, that's so crazy though, I just can't believe this. I really can't, but thank you.
This is for our son, and this is taken away from that, because now this is exactly what they want you guys to do, so that way my son isn't being heard. And I need that to, this is my husband.
Your son's being heard, sis. Your son's being heard.
This shit got stuck.
Your son's being heard. We're not playing about my baby.
Justice for Daunte, that's it.
Period.
We don't want all this extra. Let's get justice. We'll get justice for my son.
Justice for Daunte.
Justice for Daunte. Justice for my son, Daunte. That's what we want. Justice for him being shot for no reason at all.
So we are back live. It's day 8, afternoon.
Going to allow BCA agents to get up on the stand and tell the jury what a video shows. The video is the evidence, especially when it comes through the mouth of a BCA agent. You know, the jury may get the impression that this person is an expert at looking at video. The jury's going to have that video. They can look at it as much as they want in the jury deliberation room. The state has the right to argue that Officer Johnson wasn't in danger of getting dragged by the car in final argument. That's totally fair game. You know, the state can argue and stop the video in final argument and say, look, both of his feet are on the ground. That's all fair game, but I'm not going to let the witnesses tell the jury what's on there, okay? As far as the photographs that 403, 405, and 402, I understand that the defense never got those still photographs. Correct?
Yes.
And they're not even on the state's witness list or the exhibit list.
Your Honor, the defense did receive those exhibits. This morning we had a 15-minute break for them to review them. That was at approximately shortly before 11 o'clock. They've now had about 2.5 hours to review the still images. They aren't novel per se because they are still images of the videos that they have had for several months. I have not heard any renewed claim that they are continually prejudiced by us being able to introduce these images. These are images which the jury has seen in real time in the video, but these are specific excerpts which have been created so that they are isolated exhibits so that they can be shown to the jury.
Judge, you've ruled.
Yep.
Yes, I am not going to reconsider any of my prior rulings, no matter how many times you want to argue it. Okay, so.
Where the state was seeking clarity, Your Honor, is that this morning it seemed like the court was saying you can't use still images to allow the witness to explain what was observed in the video. Then the state utilized the video and asked the witness to explain what was being seen in the video, and that too was cut out. What the state is asking now is to admit these still images as exhibits, but I will refrain from asking the juror what is specifically occurring in these still images.
I've ruled that the still exhibits, the still photographs, 402, 403, and 405 will not be admitted. The objection is sustained. Okay. All right. Are you ready for the jury? Okay. Thank you, Deputy. Oh, by the way, one-word objections, please. Okay, and say one word, and then if you need to make an argument, we've got to use these buggers. Okay. Okay. Thank you, Deputy.
So the jury wasn't in just now.
Oh.
Now they're coming in.
If you're going to be speaking, go to the podium because our poor court reporter can't hear, okay? That also prevents you from talking over each other, right?
Yes, Your Honor. Will do.
Right.
So, so Judge Chu is saying here that, even though these are just stills of video that's already in evidence, they can't use the stills. They can't be having the BCA walk through what's in the stills or what's even in the videos. That seems to be what is going on. And then there's a question like saying, the BCA agents aren't experts in video, even though they're reviewing the video as part of their job. Also seems to be what's going on here.
Okay, please be seated. All right, members of the jury, I'm sorry for the short delay. Okay, you may continue, Mr. Larson.
I'll be brief. Could you please redisplay Exhibit 204? Agent Petersen, I'm showing you Exhibit 204. Would you agree that this is the video paused exactly at 2:02 p.m.?
Yes.
Thank you. No further questions.
All right, you may cross, counsel.
Good afternoon, Special Agent Petersen. Would you agree with me that a visual observation being there is much better than a body-worn camera planted on your chest?
A visual observation?
Yes,
What do
you're
you
there
mean?
and you can see everything, and your body-worn camera only takes up a certain amount. Is that a fair statement?
Yes.
And with respect to hollow point bullets, they're used by law enforcement because they do not leave the body and shoot somebody else. Is that a fair statement?
Generally speaking, yes.
Yeah. And that's why they're used by law enforcement?
Yes.
And does your office use them?
Yes.
And when, did you notice in these videos that Johnson's video was a second off of Potter's?
No.
All right. And with respect to the taser statement, you're familiar with tasers?
Yes.
And is when somebody yells taser, that's warning to the other law enforcement officers that are there to back off. Fair statement?
I don't know if it's fair to say to back off.
But to not touch the guy because you might get electrocuted.
That's part of the reason, sure. Yeah.
What's the other reason?
To give warning that the taser is going to be deployed.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have.
Counsel?
Agent Petersen, earlier this morning you testified about your career in the Force Investigations Unit, correct?
Yes.
You've evaluated over 70 claimed reports of excessive force, correct?
Yes.
Including several homicides.
Judge, I object to this. I never went into his past experience. It's outside the scope of cross-examination.
I'm getting to a point, Your Honor.
Okay. You may continue for a while.
In your experience, has reviewing body-worn camera footage been a critical aspect of your investigation?
Yes.
And indeed, requesting body-worn camera is a critical request that is made in an investigation.
Same objection, Your Honor. I didn't go into requesting body-worn cameras at all.
The objection is sustained beyond the scope.
Yep. What would occur if there was no body-worn camera to review in an officer-involved case? If you had no body-worn camera footage?
Object to that is not relevant, Your Honor, and it's also outside the scope.
I am again sustaining the objection outside the scope.
Does body-worn camera footage have certain benefits?
Same objection, Your Honor.
The objection is overruled.
When body-worn camera video exists, are there certain benefits to reviewing that video versus relying on the testimony of witnesses?
I didn't ask that question. It's outside the scope. I talked about visual observation.
Okay, one word objections, please. I'll let you answer that.
Gonna have to repeat it, I'm sorry.
Sure. Does reviewing body-worn camera footage in these cases have advantages at times than simply relying on the testimony or statements of witnesses?
At times, yes.
Yes. No further questions.
Special Agent Petersen, what I asked you was, is a visual observation of something, forget about the testimony, a visual observation of something better than a body-worn camera that has tunnel vision?
It can be, yes. It'll be different.
It's a large, you can see it better if you're there looking at it than a body-worn camera. Isn't that true? Because you see more?
Yeah, that would be accurate. Yes.
Thank you.
Mr. Larson?
What advantages does reviewing body-worn camera have in your investigation?
Object, Your Honor, outside the scope of recall.
The objection is overruled.
What is the advantage of body-worn camera? It provides a independent depiction of an event.
That can be reviewed?
That can be reviewed.
Paused?
Yep, yes.
Brought into court as an exhibit?
Yes.
No further questions.
Anything further, Mr. Chairman? Anything further?
No, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay. You may step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
The state may call its next witness.
At this time, Your Honor, the state calls Michelle Frasconi.
Okay. Good afternoon. Will you please stand behind the witness chair? Raise your right hand. Do you swear under penalty of perjury that you will truthfully testify in connection with this trial?
I do.
Please take a seat.
Thank you.
And would you please remove your mask? State your full name and spell it.
First name is Michelle. Last name is Frasconi. Michelle. Last name Frascone.
Okay, we have a court reporter taking down everything that's being said. So you have to say yes or no instead of shaking your head. Don't say uh-huh or uh-uh. Only one person can talk at a time. Wait until the question is finished before you answer. If you don't understand a question, ask for clarification. And finally, if an objection is made, stop talking. Don't answer it unless I tell you to.
Thank you.
Counsel?
Would you state your occupation for the record?
I'm a police officer for the state of Minnesota.
What's your current, what law enforcement agency are you with?
I work for the state of Minnesota, the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension.
What is your current rank?
Assistant Special Agent in Charge.
How long have you been with the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension?
I have been with them since 2016.
What unit are you currently assigned to?
Currently assigned to the Force Investigative Unit.
Prior to working for the BCA, do I understand that you have prior law enforcement experience?
That's correct.
And what is that?
Prior to coming to the BCA, worked for the city of Woodbury as a police officer.
And that was from 2006 to 2016, correct?
That's correct.
And you're a licensed peace officer still today?
Yes, I am.
And you take continuing education courses to maintain that license?
Yes.
Based on your law enforcement experience, did you acquire specialized knowledge or experience in the use of firearms and other weapons such as tasers?
I did.
If asked, are you able to describe the basic features and functionality of weapons such as firearms and tasers?
I am.
As part of your work in the Force Investigations Unit, do I understand that you've responded or participated in the investigation of over 100 officer-involved shootings?
That's correct.
Both as a lead agent and at times a supporting agent?
Correct.
And you were assigned to assist in the investigation of the case involving Kim Potter, correct?
That's correct.
I want to get right to your actions on April 11th of 2001. Do you recall that day?
I do.
And what were you doing?
It was a Sunday afternoon and I was at home.
Okay. And did you receive a report of an officer-involved shooting in Brooklyn Center which prompted a response from you?
Yes, I did.
And could you describe that response?
I was contacted by my supervisor who requested that I respond to the Brooklyn Center Police Department.
And when did you arrive to the Brooklyn Center Police Department?
I think I arrived around 4 p.m.
When you arrived, were you the first agent at the precinct, or was anyone else from the BCA already present?
Prior to my arrival, Special Agent in Charge Scott Mueller was at the police department.
And what did you do when you first arrived?
When I first arrived, I met with Agent Mueller, who provided me just some general information about what the investigation was involving.
Soon after you met with Agent Mueller, were you joined by another BCA agent?
Yes, I was.
And who was that?
Agent Sam McGinnis.
At the time after you were briefed by Mueller and spoke to Agent McGinnis, did you learn who the involved officer or officers were?
Yes, I did.
And who was that?
Officer Kim Potter was the involved officer, and then there were 2 witness officers that were also at the agency.
Was that Officer Lucky and Sergeant Johnson?
That's correct.
Okay. After meeting with Agent Mueller and Agent McGinnis, who was the next individual who you encountered?
I went into the conference room that Officer Potter was in with her counsel, and then at the point after that, I went upstairs and met with Sergeant Johnson.
Okay, well, let's talk about both of those encounters. You said you went upstairs to see Johnson. So do I understand there's a conference room on a lower level or a main level of the Brooklyn Center Police Department?
That's correct.
Okay, and that's where you saw Officer Potter?
Correct.
Was Agent McGinnis with you as well?
Yes, he was.
When you observed Officer Potter, was she still wearing her uniform?
Yes, she was.
How much time did you spend with her?
A very short amount of time.
Okay. Before that date, did you know her?
I did.
In what capacity?
In a professional capacity, and our husbands had prior worked together many years ago.
Okay. Would you agree that Ms. Potter sitting here at council table over at the front council table closest to you?
Yes.
Okay. At the time you encountered her, did you observe whether she had a firearm on her duty belt?
Yes, I did.
Did you receive any information about that firearm?
I was advised that that firearm was Sergeant Johnson's firearm.
Okay. What was the first action that you and Agent McGinnis took when you encountered her?
Photographs were taken of her uniform.
Okay. And what happened to the equipment that she was wearing?
It was collected.
Okay. At that time, did you know why she was in possession of Sergeant Johnson's firearm?
I did not.
After the firearm was collected, do you recall what was done with it?
It was placed inside of a box.
Okay. Did you observe at that time whether it was loaded or unloaded?
I did.
And what was it?
It was unloaded.
Unloaded? So you took Sergeant Johnson's gun from Officer Potter. What did you do after that?
I went upstairs and met with Sergeant Johnson.
Okay. At some point, did you also speak again with Agent Mueller?
I did.
Did you reveal that you had a prior interaction with Officer Potter?
I did.
And did that affect your involvement in this investigation?
Not a lot. I just asked for, to have other duties assigned to me, and at that time I was assigned to Sergeant Johnson.
Okay. And why did you ask to not have duties related to Officer Potter?
Just out of just making sure that there was no conflict or any issues as a result of it.
Sometimes we use the words appearance of impropriety. You wanted to avoid something like that. Am I correct?
Yeah, I'm going to let you answer that objection overruled.
So you said you were tasked with then going to talk to Sergeant Johnson?
That's correct.
And did you bring anything with you when you met with him?
I did.
And what was that?
I brought his handgun upstairs.
Okay. And when you brought his handgun upstairs, what did you anticipate doing?
I wasn't sure of his involvement at the time, so I wanted to make sure that it was with me. Many times we find that supervisors will exchange weapons when they weren't actually have any involvement in the case, and so when I went upstairs to meet with him, there was a possibility that his weapon would be returned. However, I became aware that he was a first-person witness, and so at that time I held on to his handgun and then collected Officer Potter's handgun.
Where did you discover Officer Potter's handgun?
In his holster.
Okay. So you made a plan to collect both firearms at that point?
That's correct.
Okay. I now want to discuss your interactions with Sergeant Johnson. How much time did you spend with him?
I guess I would approximate 10 minutes or so.
Okay. Did you take any photographs of him?
I did.
At the time, was he wearing Officer Potter's firearm?
Yes, he was.
Did you inspect that firearm to see whether it was loaded or unloaded?
I did.
And was it?
It was loaded.
Loaded. And what did you do with that firearm after you collected it?
I secured it in a box for our crime scene.
Okay. When you collected both firearms, did you document them by serial number to ensure that they were distinguished?
I did.
Okay. And to whom did you bring those firearms after you documented them?
Agent McGinnis.
Agent McGinnis. I now want to show you just a few photographs. Could you please put up Exhibit 176? I'm showing you Exhibit 176. If I says, can you recognize which gun this is?
Yes.
What gun is this?
Officer Potter's.
Take a look again. It's the unloaded firearm.
I apologize. Sergeant Johnson's.
Thank you. You said you took several photographs of Officer Johnson. If I showed you 2 photos of them, would you recognize them?
Yes.
At this time, the state offers Exhibits 84 and 85, photographs of Sergeant Johnson. 84 and 85, sir?
Any objection? Exhibits 84 and 85 will be admitted and you may publish.
Please show 84. Agent Frasconi, I'm showing you Exhibit 84. Is this the picture of Sergeant Michael Johnson as you saw him on April 11th?
Yes.
Now Exhibit 85. Could you describe what's shown here in Exhibit 85?
That would be Officer Potter's handgun, showing that it was loaded and contained within Sergeant Johnson's holster.
Okay. I'd now like to show Exhibit 178, which is already admitted into evidence. Do you recognize which gun this is?
I do.
Which gun is this?
This is Officer Potter's handgun.
Okay. And does it also include the ammo that you discovered in the firearm?
Correct.
Okay. And then Exhibit 179. Again, just a close-up of that serial number, correct?
That's correct.
And then Exhibit 180. Again, the loaded magazine that you discovered?
Correct.
Okay. And then again, Agent Frasconi, I'll show you the exhibit. I'll speak into the mic in a second. Exhibit 199, would you agree this is Officer Potter's firearm?
Correct.
And that was Exhibit 199. No further questions, Your Honor.
Is there any cross?
No cross.
All right. Step down.
Thank you.
The state may call its next witness.
At this time, the state calls Agent Sam McGinnis.
Good afternoon. Okay, please stand behind the witness chair and raise your right hand. Do you swear under penalty of perjury that you will truthfully testify in connection with this cause?
I do, Your Honor.
Please have a seat. Remove your mask, please. And state your full name and spell it.
Sam McGinnis, SAMMCGINNIS.
All right, the court reporter is taking down everything that's being said. So say yes or no instead of shaking your head. Don't say uh-huh or uh-uh. If you don't understand a question, let the lawyer know. If an objection is made, stop talking. And don't answer the question unless I tell you to. Okay, only one person can talk at a time, so wait till the question's finished before you answer.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right.
Could you please state your occupation for the record?
I'm a senior special agent with the Minnesota Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, currently in the Force Investigations Unit.
How long have you been employed by the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension?
Since April of 2020.
Do you have law enforcement experience prior to joining the BCA?
I do.
Could you please recount that for the jury?
I was with the Waseca Police Department from 2011 to 2015. From 2015 to 2020, I was with the Mankato Department of Public Safety.
Could you describe your assignments when you worked for the Mankato Police Department?
I started there as a patrol officer, and I worked my way through investigations, working narcotics, and I left there as a patrol sergeant.
Did you have any specialized experience with firearms?
I did. One of my collateral duties was a firearms instructor.
And that required an additional certification, correct?
I did.
And you're still a licensed peace officer and take continuing education courses to maintain that license?
Correct.
Would you agree that you have acquired specialized training and experience in both firearms and tasers?
The basic functions, yes.
Yep. And if asked, you are able to describe the basic features and functionality of both firearms and tasers, correct?
Yes.
Now, the jury has already heard testimony about what the Force Investigations Unit does, but I want to specifically focus on what you did on April 11th. Okay, sir?
Yes, sir.
Do you recall that day?
I do.
And did you receive some information that prompted a response from you?
I did.
And what was that information?
I was contacted by ASAC Mike Phil concerning a fatal officer-involved shooting that had occurred in Brooklyn Center. He informed me that the driver was deceased. There was one officer that had shot or discharged their firearm, and 2 officers that had been on scene during the incident.
And was there a request for you to respond somewhere?
Yes.
Where did you go?
ASAC Phil requested that I respond directly to the Brooklyn Center Police Department.
When did you arrive?
Approximately a little after 1600 hours.
Okay. We know that is 4 p.m.
Correct.
When you arrived, were you the first agent there?
I was not.
Who else was present?
Special Agent in Charge Scott Mueller and Assistant Special Agent in Charge Michelle Frasconi were already on scene.
Did you have a conversation with them prior to beginning your investigation?
I did.
And were you given an initial task?
I was.
What was that task?
I was tasked with photographing and collecting the equipment from Officer Kim Potter.
Okay. And did you meet with Officer Potter at the Brooklyn Center Police Department?
I did.
And she's seated here at council table?
Yes, sir.
At the time that you encountered her, was she still wearing her uniform?
She was.
Was she in possession of her duty belt?
She was.
Was she in possession of a firearm?
She was.
Did you receive any information about that firearm?
After our interaction together, I did, yes.
Yep. And you learned that that was Sergeant Johnson's firearm, correct?
I did.
Was that a loaded or unloaded firearm?
Unloaded.
Did you ultimately take photographs of her?
I did.
Did those photographs include her wearing the duty belt, firearm, and taser that she had on her person?
Yes.
After taking those photographs, do you recall what you did next?
I do.
What was that?
I collected her equipment to include her duty belt.
Okay. Did you collect that firearm?
I did.
And where did that go?
That went into a box and then into ASAC Frasconi's custody.
And when you collected it, did you confirm that it was unloaded?
Yes.
Okay. After the firearm was removed, you testified that you did collect that duty belt?
Yes.
And could you describe what is all contained in a typical officer's duty belt?
Typically, a firearm, a set of keys, spare magazines for said firearm, flashlight, mace, handcuffs, radio, taser, a baton.
Is the placement of items on an officer's duty belt something that a typical officer plans out and does deliberately?
Yes.
When you collected the duty belt, did you separate the taser from the duty belt, or did it remain in its holster?
It remained in its holster.
How much time did you spend with Officer Potter?
Altogether, maybe 2 hours.
2 hours. Do I understand that you, at one point, went to North Memorial Hospital where she provided a blood sample?
Yes.
And then you returned back to the Brooklyn Center Police Department?
Myself, Officer Potter left from the hospital and didn't return.
Yes. Thank you for clarifying. When you returned to the Brooklyn Center Police Department, did you have another encounter with Agent Frasconi?
I did.
And did she provide you any evidence at that point?
She did.
What did she provide you?
2 firearms.
And at that point, did she describe to you which firearm was Potter's and which firearm was Sergeant Johnson's?
Yes.
And did you document that in a chain of custody form that's used by the BCA?
Yes.
After you collected the firearms from Agent Frasconi, can you tell the jury where you brought those firearms?
I brought those 2 firearms along with the blood sample or blood kit to the crime scene team leader, Melissa Lauren, and signed them over to her custody.
Okay. At this time, I want to show the jury the photographs that you took of the defendant. The state offers at this time exhibits 210 to 213.
Exhibits 210 to 213 will be admitted into evidence and you may publish.
First, I'm showing you Exhibit 210. Do you recognize this?
I do.
What is this?
It's a picture that I took of Officer Potter.
And this is her standing, looking straight towards you, right?
Correct.
Front, face forward. Okay. And can you see the taser in her holster?
Yes.
And what side of her body does she have that holster?
Her left side.
Okay. Published 213, 211. Pardon me, 211. And what? This is another photograph of Officer Potter, correct?
Yes.
And to which direction is she standing in 211?
She's showing me her right side.
Okay. And this is the side that she held her firearm?
Correct.
Okay. 212? I'm showing you Exhibit 212. What's shown here?
Her left side.
Okay. And this is, again, as you testified, the side where she's wearing her taser?
Correct.
Okay. And then 213. For completeness, this is what Officer Potter looked like from behind, correct?
Correct.
Right. Now, do you know whether, you can take that down, do you know whether the duty belt and taser that you collected from the defendant were photographed?
They were.
And you've seen a set of photographs prior to trial, correct?
I have.
The state offers exhibits 214 to 225, Your Honor. These are photographs of the duty belt and taser.
Any objection? Those exhibits will be admitted into evidence and you may publish.
Thank you, Your Honor. Please show 214. We'll try to do these in a series, Agent McGinnis, and I'll ask you what is shown, and if you could please just fulsomely describe what you see, I think we can go pretty efficiently. I'm showing you Exhibit 214. What is shown here?
Officer Potter's duty belt laying flat on a table.
Okay. Exhibit 215. What's shown here?
Her taser out of the holster.
Okay. 216. What is shown here?
Officer Potter's empty firearm holster.
Okay. And right next to the firearm holster, these are some of the items which you described an officer typically carries on a duty belt?
Yes, sir.
Exhibit 217. Would you agree that 217 is another more close-up image of the firearm holster?
Yes, sir.
Exhibit 218. Just a more close-up image of the firearm holster, correct?
Yes, sir.
Exhibit 219. Just another image of how the firearm holster is mounted on the duty belt. Is that correct, sir?
Correct.
Exhibit 220. What does Exhibit 220 show you?
Officer Potter's empty taser holster.
Exhibit 221. Another photo of the taser holster, correct?
Correct.
Exhibit 222. Another photo of the taser holster, correct?
Correct.
Exhibit 223. Would you agree this is a side view of the taser holster?
Yes.
Could you describe what the black piece of plastic on that taser holster is?
The one that looks like a lever, if you will.
Okay, a lever.
It's a security mechanism. It once the taser is inside of the holster, it's retained there by that security mechanism. It can't be brought out again until that is pushed and the taser is released.
And then Exhibit 224. This is just a straight image of the taser, is that correct? Exhibit 224?
Yes, sir.
And then 225? What is shown here?
Just the bottom of Officer Potter's taser showing the serial number and the department number on it.
Thank you. Put that down. Based on your examination of the defendant and the defendant's equipment, could you testify about how she had her weapons holstered to enable her to draw them?
They were both in what I would call a straight draw position. So both the rear handles of the taser and the gun would be facing her rear.
How was the firearm? Pardon me. How would Officer Potter be able to pull the firearm from her firearm holster?
Her firearm was on her dominant side, which you have to use your right hand to draw.
Yep. Was there any safety mechanisms or straps that were holding it into the holster?
Yes.
What was that? Could you describe that?
That particular holster has a snap retention system, same concept. It's a security mechanism. Once the firearm is in the holster and that snap is, placed on, the firearm cannot be removed until that snap is released.
Okay. And you would unsnap that snap with your dominant hand, with your right hand?
Yes.
Okay. What about the taser on the left side? How is that unholstered?
Again, breaking that retention system or pushing that lever, and then using your non-dominant hand.
Okay. Am I correct that the defendant's duty belt and taser were stored at the BCA during the pendency of this case?
Yes.
When the BCA stored these items, were they altered or manipulated in any way?
No.
Do you agree that the belt was transported here to the Hennepin County Government Center in preparation for trial?
Yes.
And did you see that belt and its contents again while here at the Government Center?
I did.
And when you did you take some action to alter that duty belt prior to trial?
Yes.
And what was that?
The holster, the firearm holster and the taser holster were both removed from the duty belt.
And why was that done?
To be shown in court.
If I showed you these actual items we've been discussing, would you recognize them?
Yes.
Okay. Let's start with the duty belt. The state offers Exhibit 378.
378 will be admitted into evidence, and you may show the agent that exhibit.
Agent McGinnis, I'm showing you Exhibit 378. You recognize this item?
Yes.
And what is this?
Officer Potter's duty belt.
Would you agree it's the duty belt, but without the two holsters?
I would.
State offers at this time Exhibit 379, the firearm holster.
Any objection? 379 will be admitted, and you may approach the witness.
I'll try something. Agent McGinnis, I'm showing you on the view screen here Exhibit 379, correct?
Yes, sir.
And would you agree this is the firearm holster?
I would.
All right. I'm going to stop this. You testified earlier about a snap. Is this the snap that you're talking about?
Yes.
Okay, so when you're holding it on the right side like this is the snap that must be depressed to take the whole, firearm off?
To release the firearm, yes.
Counsel, Counsel, you need to stay behind the podium.
That's fine.
Okay.
Next, the state offers Exhibit 380, the taser holster.
Oh, that exhibit will be admitted.
Thank you, Your Honor. Agent McGinnis, you recognize this as the taser holster, Exhibit 380?
Yes.
And the clasp or the lever that you talked about is still functioning today?
Yes.
Now I want to show you the actual taser. State Offers Exhibit 203.
Any objection? No objection. 203 will be admitted.
Permission to approach and to hand the exhibit to the witness for demonstration.
May.
I have a question first. Agent McGinnis, you now are in possession of Exhibit 203. Could you describe this taser's general features?
It's a Taser 7, model Taser 7, yellow in color. It has a safety switch on it, a battery in the bottom of it.
Could you hold up the taser and show the jury the safety switch? If you have that safety switch in the disarmed position, can that be fired?
No.
To activate it, you have to flip the safety switch, am I correct?
Correct.
Okay. And one moment ago, deputy came over and provided you a live battery, correct?
Correct.
All right. What will happen when you turn on that battery, based on your training experience?
When I put the battery in and activate the taser,
Yeah.
it will show the, it'll arm it and show the lasers, the CID screen, and the flashlight.
Okay. When you say it'll show the CID screen, could you describe where that's going to come from?
From the back, it shows the information about the taser, the battery level, and the probe status.
Okay, and you testified that there's also lasers?
Yes.
Okay, could you tell the jury what is shot out the end of that taser once you arm it?
There are aiming lasers that I guess show you where to fire. The taser probes.
Okay. At this time, Agent McGinnis, I'd ask you to stand up, stay behind the witness box there, and to activate the taser to show the LED lights, the lasers, and the flashlight. Thank you. Agent McGinnis, without pointing the taser at Judge Chu, could you please show the back end of that taser to the jury? Thank you. You can please disarm that taser, and could you remove that battery so it could be collected by the deputy? All right, I want to get back to some investigative work you did in this case. Did you ever visit the crime scene?
Briefly.
Okay. Just to bring the firearms to Melissa Lauren?
Yes.
Okay. In addition to the evidence that you obtained from Officer Potter, did you collect other evidence?
Yes.
Okay. In terms of what you gathered, would you agree you gathered a lot of the documentation in this case?
Yes.
That include paperwork, records, policies, etc.?
Correct.
Did you also participate in a number of witness interviews?
Yes.
And you collected reports from various officers?
Yes.
I want to talk, not about those per se, but your events on May 4th. Do you recall meeting with witnesses at the Brooklyn Center Police Department on May 4th?
Yes.
Okay, who were those witnesses?
Commander Garrett Flesland and Sergeant Mike Petersen.
Was that a scheduled meeting?
It was.
What was the purpose of the meeting?
To upload Officer Potter's data from her taser.
Okay. And to do that, did you have to then bring Officer Potter's taser, the one you just held in your hand, back to the police department?
Yes.
And what sort of data did you hope to obtain from that?
The records of use, a full audit of the taser, make sure it's functioning properly, things of that nature.
Okay. And did you receive insistence in getting that information off of the taser?
I did.
And how was that performed?
Sergeant Mike Petersen removed the battery from the taser and put it in the docking station at the Brooklyn Center Police Department, and then uploaded the data onto their computer system.
And then you end up getting a report from that, correct?
Sergeant Petersen printed out a copy of the audit for me, yes.
And then he provided it to you?
Correct.
Okay. What did you learn regarding who had possessed that taser prior to coming into possession of it yourself?
I learned that Officer Potter was the only one that had possession of that taser, at least in the field.
Okay. And when did she gain possession of it?
March 26th, I believe.
Did you receive any other information about the taser's functionality?
Yes.
And whether it was functioning at that time?
It was.
Okay. Now, was there any data that you received regarding when the taser had been function tested?
Yes.
Okay. What is a function test?
It's a test you perform on the taser to make sure the core electronics are working properly. So an internal and external check.
Okay. Are you familiar with how often an officer is supposed to perform a function test?
Yes.
How often?
According to the Brooklyn Center Police Department taser policy, they should perform a spark test before each shift.
If an officer has a taser on their duty belt, how would the officer have to remove that taser to perform the function test?
Yes.
Now, have you heard of a function test also being called a spark test?
Yes.
Why is it called a spark test?
The spark test name comes from when you arc the taser to make sure that it's working properly.
So part of the function test is actually not only turning it on, but causing an electrical current to be shot through it.
Correct.
Or sparked. In the information that you received in the report, did the report indicate when and whether a function test was performed on particular days?
Yes.
All right. Slightly related topic. In addition to the taser data, did you gather information about when Officer Potter worked since March 26th?
Yes.
And how did you receive that information?
Commander Flesland emailed me a copy, the days she had worked.
Okay. And do you recall how many shifts Officer Potter worked between March 26th and April 11th?
Yes.
How many?
10.
If I showed you that email again, would you recognize it?
Yes.
State Offers Exhibit 226.
226 will be admitted and you may publish.
There we go. Agent McGinnis, let's zoom in here. I'm showing you Exhibit 226. Would you agree this is a copy of Commander Flesland's email to you?
Yes.
And right here, we've zoomed in on the pertinent portion of the email. This would recount Officer Potter's work history from March 26th to April 11th, correct?
Correct.
And essentially, she worked March 26th, 7th, and 8th, March 31st and April 1st, April 5th and 6th, and then April 9th, 10th, and 11th, correct?
Correct.
Okay. You can take that down. Once you had that work schedule, what did you do with that information?
I cross-referenced it to the taser audit showing when function tests or spark tests were conducted and when they weren't.
Did you draw any conclusions?
I did.
What were those conclusions?
Officer Potter had conducted function test or spark test on her taser 6 out of the 10 shifts.
But not all 10?
No.
Do Do you recall the last occasion when she performed the function test?
April the 9th.
April 9th? So she worked on April 10th and 11th and did not perform the function test on either day?
Correct.
All right. Excuse me. One word objections, please. It has been asked and answered. Please move on.
Thank you.
And no more speaking objections. All right? Okay.
I do want to talk more about these function tests. And I don't want to repeat your testimony, but you did conclude that there were days on which the function test was not performed, correct?
Correct.
Now, Agent McGinnis, you were a police officer for 10 years. In terms of your investigation, was this information that you learned about her failure to function test noteworthy?
It was.
The objection is sustained.
Was her failure to function test, based on your understanding of Brooklyn Center policy, a violation of that policy?
I think you need more foundation for that, counsel. I'm going to sustain the objection for lack of foundation.
You previously testified that you understood, Agent McGinnis, that the function test was something that needed to be performed every day before officer shift, correct? You testified to that?
Yes.
Okay. And then you also testified about information about when that was not done by Officer Potter, correct?
The objection is overruled. You may answer.
Yes.
Just doing the math here. Based on that information in your investigation, did you conclude that she violated that policy?
I'm going to sustain the objection for lack of foundation.
Okay. Did the, let's say this, your results, pardon me, your conclusions that she did not function test, those are, you found no information to the contrary, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. Now, earlier we discussed the collection of the firearm used by Officer Potter, and that you provided that to Melissa Lauren, correct?
Correct.
Do you know whether after it was inventoried, there was further examination of that firearm?
I am aware that there was, yes.
Yep. And that additional work was done by forensic scientists, not you?
Yes.
Now, you did, though, have an opportunity to view and examine that firearm on a later occasion, correct?
Yes.
And you'd agree that you'd be able to recognize that firearm if I showed it to you?
Yes.
And
what is the question, counsel?
Asking Agent McGinnis, Agent, to identify the firearm, Your Honor.
Well, that's already been done. The objection is sustained.
Yep. Can we have a sidebar, Your Honor?
All right, thanks everyone for tuning in. We've been hearing from Senior Special Agent Sam McGinnis walking through various things. He demonstrated the taser that Kim Potter should have been using, so that did get demonstrated. Thank you all for joining on the chats on Facebook and YouTube. And there's definitely talk, there's been a lot of objections. Because cumulative is like a redundant one. Foundation means that the premise of the question hasn't been laid out. So, the defense attorney, Earl Grey, trying to chip that off, trying to keep the state from having momentum in the case of sort of laying out the facts of everything.
Oh, the objection is overruled.
Could you show Exhibit 178 to the witness, please? Recognize the firearm in Exhibit 178?
Yes.
Is that Officer Potter's firearm?
It appears to be, yes.
And I showed you that same very firearm, in actuality, would you recognize it?
Yes.
Okay, I'm now showing you Exhibit 199. This also is Officer Potter's firearm?
Yes.
Now, do you recall taking the firearm and the Officer Potter's taser on May 6th of 2021?
Yes.
Okay. Describe the circumstances that prompted you to be in possession of both of those items.
Myself, Melissa Lauren, and one of our crime scene photographers, one of our special agents, we're going to take pictures of the items and weigh them.
Okay. And did you use a scale provided by the BCA Crime Lab?
Yes.
And when you weighed the firearm, what was included in that weight?
Ammunition.
17 rounds of live ammunition?
Correct.
And why did you weigh the firearm with ammo?
That would represent what was in the firearm the day of the incident.
And did you, you weighed both items, correct?
Correct.
Did you document the weights of those items?
Yes.
Okay, what were the results?
The firearm weighed approximately 2.11 pounds. The taser weighed approximately 0.94 pounds.
Okay. So the Glock with the ammo weighed about over twice as much as the taser.
The objection is overruled. I'll let you answer.
Yes.
Thank you. Now, I'd like to discuss for a moment some other differences beyond weight between the Glock and the taser. Could you please put up simultaneously exhibits 224 and 178? Was identifying differences between these two weapons something that you did in the course of your investigation?
Yes.
And can you identify some of the differences for the jury at this time?
Yes.
Okay. Please.
The objection is overruled. You may answer.
Thank you.
The taser is yellow. The firearm is black. The taser has a stocky body to it compared to the Glock handgun. The grip of the taser is shorter and wider than the Glock.
Let's pause on that. How much shorter is the handle on the taser?
I don't know the exact number, but when you're holding the taser, I guess you can't get all your fingers on it.
Okay, like your pinky finger?
Correct.
Okay. What about the texture of the grip?
The Glock handgun is textured the majority of the way around it, including the back. The Taser 7 has some light texturing on the sides, but not on the back. The Glock trigger is curved. The Taser trigger is flat with some serrations cut into it. The Taser has an external, on and off switch or safety. The Glock does not.
What does the Glock have in terms of a safety mechanism?
Technically, it has an internal safety, and then it's not really a safety, but the button on the trigger, it would need to be pushed in along with the trigger to be set off.
Okay. And so, and then previously you've already shown the jury in the demonstration the lasers and the LED lights?
Correct.
Okay. Is there any lasers or LED lights on the firearm?
There is not.
And you've already testified as to the differences between the holsters, correct?
Yes.
And the hands which are used to unholster the weapons.
Correct.
Okay.
I'll let the answer stand.
Thank you.
Do you want to move on, Counsel?
Yep. I now would like to show you another object. Permission to approach the witness with Exhibit 183. Agent McGinnis, I'm showing you an item marked for identification as Exhibit 381. Do you recognize this?
I do.
And what is this?
A Taser 7.
Yep. And do you know the origin of this Taser 7?
I believe it belongs to the BCA.
How is it different from the Taser that we've seen today?
It's newer. That's about it. Unused.
What about with regard to the probes?
I believe there are training probes in there.
So these are not live probes that are functional?
To my knowledge, yes.
And what about the battery, based on your experience with this particular item?
It is not a live battery or is not charged.
Okay, so besides the probes and the battery, is this item identical to Officer Potter's taser?
I believe so, yes.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, the state offers Exhibit 381 as a demonstrative exhibit.
No objection as a demonstrative exhibit only.
Okay. Yes, 381 will be a court exhibit. It will not be admitted into evidence because it's demonstrative only.
Now, Agent McGinnis, we went through some of the differences between the firearm and the taser pretty quickly. Would you agree that a person can experience some of these differences better when holding the weapons in their hands?
Yes.
The objection is overruled. I'll let the answer stand.
Okay. Your Honor, at this time, permission to publish Exhibits 381 and Exhibit 199, utilizing the services of a deputy by inviting jurors to place their hands on each exhibit here in court.
Counsel, sidebar, please.
Thanks for tuning in, everyone. We've been working our way through day 8. Senior Special Agent Sam McGinnis, the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension, has been outlining stuff about, he demonstrated the taser earlier. It's been sort of slowly walking through things. So it's been a lot of objections from the defense, whether it's, cumulative or lack of foundation or whatever. And the Judge Chu has reprimanded Earl Grey several times, kind of saying, like, you can't just keep babbling on in your objections. You're supposed to use kind of the one-word trigger to represent what the objection is and then take it to a sidebar on the headset. The judge was pretty clear about that. So there's been a lot of that today. The McGinnis, the BCA Senior Special Agent, has been outlining the differences between a gun and a taser, how the taser has a different weight, a different shape, a different texture, and all of those sort of different attributes that, as was outlined earlier by another witness, talking about how the taser training talks about how weapons confusion can kill people, right? Like, that is an important issue with tasers. So that was already addressed earlier in the trial. We did see also that, like, they had 12-hour shifts, which seems like a lot. That's a pretty long shift. We saw that laid out earlier. If we have a minute, I can try to answer any questions from the chat. I haven't really seen any questions headed my direction in a minute. Thank you all for chatting. Again, just try not to feed the trolls. Just mark it with some symbols. We really don't want nasty chat troll stuff happening. And thank you. Nico's been cranking out, sort of adding some more sort of excerpts, video. Alex has been tweeting. Thank you, everyone, for your help on this. It's been a group project. Yes, this has been being televised on Court TV. They've been, tracking it. We get a video feed from Court TV that doesn't always work right.
The objection is sustained. I think if there was an objection, members of the jury, you're going to be able to see the taser and the handgun when you're in deliberations. It won't have a battery in it, so it won't be functional.
It won't have a live battery, correct.
Okay.
I have no further questions for this witness at this time, Your Honor. Thank you.
Okay, counsel.
Now they're going to cross.
Good afternoon, Agent McGinnis.
Good afternoon, sir.
This Taser 7 is a new version of the taser. Am I right about that?
Yes.
It just came out
Yes.
in the spring of 2021,
Somewhere in that area.
or it was just purchased by Brooklyn Center in March.
That's what
This year.
I was told, yes.
In fact, the only person who had a Taser 7 was, at the time, Officer Potter in that department.
Are you asking me, sir?
I'm asking you, yeah.
I'd have to take your word for it. I'm not sure how many they had rolled out at that time.
So, the Taser 7, or the Tasers in general, have a handle that is similar to a gun, correct? There are differences, of course, but it's designed so you hold it in your hand, right?
Correct.
It's designed so that you pull a trigger like a gun, right?
They both have triggers, yes.
And it's designed so you aim at somebody, right?
Yes.
And while this Taser 7 is yellow in color, the top is black, is it not?
Yes, there is black on the top.
And the handle itself is black, right?
Yes, sir.
And you know from your investigation that this Taser was working all the way through the 10 shifts that Officer Potter had it. Is that correct?
Yes.
In fact, on that day in May, you tested the battery power of the Taser, did you not?
Yes.
You found that the battery was 78% charge, isn't that correct?
Correct.
Well enough to fire the Taser, of course.
Yes.
Right? And it was a brand new gun, right?
Taser.
Right? Yeah, a Taser. It was a brand new Taser.
Yes.
So it would be fair to assume that it would be in working order, a brand new gun. Is that correct?
Taser.
Yeah, a Taser. Sorry.
Yes.
There is a confusion here between a Taser and a gun. So you would assume that a Taser that was fully charged or charged at 78% worked throughout the 10 shifts, correct?
Depending on what it started at, yes.
But you have no evidence whatsoever that this Taser wasn't operable, do you?
Correct.
Okay. And we have Officer Potter sometimes doing the test, the charge test, or whatever it's called. What's it called again?
The spark test.
The spark test, okay. But she did it 6 out of 10 times, right?
Yes.
And it worked, right?
Yes.
Do you have a percentage of the officers in Brooklyn Center who skipped that spark test?
I do not.
You also tried to find, or did find, an answer to the question of whether she had deployed her Taser since she was assigned that Taser. Did you not?
Yes.
And you found out that she had not deployed it whatsoever. Is that correct?
Yes.
So the last spark test was on the 9th rather than the 11th. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
You have no evidence between those 2 days that somehow, some way, that Taser was no longer functioning. Is that correct?
No, sir.
And you also took Officer Potter in for a blood sample. Is that right?
Yes.
And she willingly went to the, I believe it was North Memorial. Is that right?
Yes, she did consent to the blood draw.
She consented to the blood sample, right?
Yes, sir.
And do you know the results of that sample?
Yes, sir.
There was nothing in her blood.
Correct.
No alcohol, no marijuana, nothing.
No, sir.
All the screens were taken. Is that correct?
To my knowledge, yes.
May I pause for a second?
Yes.
During your investigation, did you ever inquire of the Taser manufacturer why the taser couldn't be shaped in a different fashion to avoid any confusion? Did you ever do that?
Objections, go to
The objection is overruled. You may answer if you know.
Could you repeat that question,
Did you ever
sir?
inquire of the taser manufacturer why it has built a unit like this when they could easily have shaped it differently?
I did not, and I do not know why.
Thank you.
Amy, go ahead and redirect.
Agent McGinnis, you've testified about the Brooklyn Center function test policy. Does that policy permit an officer to not put their hands on that taser if they think it's working?
Wait a second. Beyond the scope of
Excuse me. I don't understand the question. Do you want to rephrase that?
Sure. The Brooklyn Center function test policy requires that an officer test it every day, correct?
Before each shift, yes.
Was there any exception in that policy?
No.
I think I had previously stated that it lacked foundation. I don't know if you've established with this witness that he's aware of Brooklyn Center policy.
Respect. Agent McGinnis, over the course of your investigation, did you review the Brooklyn Center conductive energy device policy?
So they're on sidebar here. So I believe with redirect, they're not really able to sort of go into new areas. A redirect, which is, the state's second round, or if it's a defense witness, the defense's sort of second round, they can't really go into a new area. They can only sort of get into the areas that went in cross. And so I think what the defense is probably trying to say is that the state can't get into this officer reviewing the policy because they didn't get to it at the first questioning. It seems like that's sort of what the back and the forth would be there. Someone asked, is that Kim Potter in the middle? And that is definitely Kim Potter in the middle there, on the right, among the other two defense attorneys, and then the third attorney who sits way in the back. So the defense is on the right, and then the state is on the left. So you have Matthew Frank has mostly not been up today, but he was up a little bit. And then Aaron Eldridge on the far left. I actually don't have the name of the other attorney who's been talking today. So if someone has that, please send it over. Thank you. So thank you all for listening. He's obviously pretty emphatic right now, going back and forth on this, but we can't hear what they're saying.
Overruled. Counsel, do you want to re-ask that question?
Agent McGinnis, we were just discussing Brooklyn Center, the taser policy, correct? Specifically the function test policy.
Correct.
And you testified on direct examination that it was required prior to every shift, correct?
Correct.
By the officer. The officer has to put it in their hands and conduct the function test.
It doesn't say that, but yes.
Okay. The policy does say, it's, quote, members carrying the taser device should perform a spark test on the unit prior to every shift.
Correct.
There is no exception.
No.
Thank you. Agent McGinnis, are you familiar with the model prior to the Taser 7, the Taser X26P?
I believe there's one in between there.
What model is that?
Or it's at the same time, the X26P, then the X2.
X2. Are you familiar with the basic layout of those particular versions of tasers?
Yes.
Do those have a similar external safety switch as what we saw in the X7?
The objection is overruled. You may answer.
Yes.
No further questions. Thank you.
Are you familiar with the custom and practices of individual officers within the Brooklyn Center Police Department?
I am not.
Anything further? Okay, you may step down.
Thank you,
All right, members of the jury. Oh, wait. You can go ahead.
You leave that taser?
No. I'm going to excuse the jury first. Could you sit down? I'm sorry. All right. Members of the jury, we're going to take our afternoon break, 20 minutes. Okay, please be seated. Yes, you may step down. And I think Mr. Larson. Okay, counsel. Let's take a break.
Thank you all for joining us. We'll be back, I think, in 20 minutes. To clarify, that was Joshua Larson, who I should have recognized. I've seen him plenty of times. That was Joshua Larson, was the state's attorney there. Just wanted to clear that up. Thank you. Thank you all for tuning in. We've been watching day 8 here. That was BCA Senior Special Agent Sam McGinnis. And, you know, we heard a lot of back and forth. He sort of demonstrated how the taser works. Like, he sort of turned on a taser. I think it had a training mode turned on. So that was all sort of part of walking through why it was unreasonable or reckless for former Officer Potter to have, discharged this service weapon. So that's what we've been keeping an eye on today, and we've been hearing from other, BCA officials, medical examiner officials, kind of walking through the process that they did when they were sort of processing the aftermath of this shooting. So I'm going to run one of our interviews that we took in those days immediately following the killing of Daunte Wright out there in Brooklyn Center. This is one of our frontline interviews. Your support makes that possible, right? It makes it possible for us to go and interview people, to kind of be out in the field, and to have folks like me kind of running the back end system as well. Special thanks to Alex today for running those live tweets, putting in all those details. If you want to follow the live tweets, they're here on the Unicorn Riot Live Twitter account right up there, and those tweets are available. So thank you, Alex, for managing that today. Nico's also been helping out. We have a little bit of new video clips kind of put together. So under the Kim Potter trial page, if I'll hit reload, it might need to refresh. The Kim Potter trial page has all the info that you want. It's on our website, unicornriot.ninja. We have stuff like the docket under case files, a juror questionnaire, witness lists for the defense and prosecution. Although I would warn that the prosecution spelling of people's names has been a little iffy, so that is worth noting. So we've got all these kind of, if you want to go back, if you missed anything, you can get a sense of that. And obviously as well, a lot of this is disturbing content. I've been trying to put up content advisories as well. So if following the Twitter is a great option if you don't want to have to kind of, be using the, or following the live court feeds. So that's a good option there. So we've got that page up, and let's see, anything else? Well, let's see. I can try to take a couple questions real quick if anybody has questions out on the chats. Otherwise, we're just going to run some of these clips, and I think we'll be back in 15 or 20 minutes. Really appreciate the kind support, everyone trying to be reasonable on the chats, not feed the trolls, and so on and so forth. And so someone asked, has Daunte's dad taken the stand yet? That's a negative. His mother was on the stand, and his girlfriend, and we had some technical trouble on those days. Those were sort of right after breaks, and so the system was kind of bumpy, so we didn't get great copies of that testimony. Let's see what else. If there's any other quick questions, otherwise I'm just going to run one of these interviews that we ran earlier. But if anybody else has any quick questions, I can try to load them for you. And we should be back in about, I think, 15 minutes or so. Do I know who paid for Potter's defense lawyers? That's a great question. I'm sure someone has that info. I personally don't have it, but they are part of, like if you search for Paul Eng and Earl Grey, they're part of the Police Officer Association's usual cadre of attorneys. So, but I don't have a receipt in hand. I generally speaking, a lot of times those associations do put in a lot of money for these defenses. So I think that that's fairly probable, but I don't have that info with me right now. Someone's asking, do we know when Colleen is supposed to testify? Who's the one who told Johnson about Kim's mental state? We never really know when people are going to testify. It can be kind of very short notice, so we don't have that. Let's see. And obviously another thing that was highlighted in the last today, especially, is just a regular service weapon. The Glock is black, and the taser is mostly yellow. They have a different shape, a different texture, a different weight, a different balance. But they're also very like a radiant yellow color mostly versus typical black. So, that's a huge difference between guns and tasers, because obviously it's well known to the taser company and in training, and all these officers got training. We went over earlier in the trial. Kim Potter got her training. We know that they're supposed to be trained that these are different weapons that feel different. So let's see. All right, I don't have any other questions that I can tackle at the moment, or that I have the answers for. But the breaks are usually about 20 minutes, so I think we're looking at about a 15-minute break. So this video that I'm going to run, one of our interviews out in the field, if I can find it, I just had it pulled up a second ago. Then we will go back to trial. As soon as it comes back, we'll be right back. So thank you all for joining. I'm Dan at Unicorn Riot, and today we've had Alex and Nico really helping out a ton during the back end. Here's a good question. Someone asked, how does the courtroom not hear them talking during a sidebar? Well, I went to federal court once, and in the federal courthouse, they crank out some white noise through the speakers, and it's a really unusual sonic sound that really does fuzz out everything. And my understanding is that white noise is added in speakers in the courtroom. So really, even if you were in there and you didn't have the headphones on, you would have a very hard time picking it off, because I believe there is white noise, sort of a hiss kind of pumped out through speakers in the courtroom during sidebars. So I believe that's how they handle it. So thank you all for joining. Again, we'll just run this sort of about 13-minute interview, and then Court will come back. So thank you all for tuning in. We really appreciate your support today. Thank you very much.
We're getting a little bit of change, but it's still not enough. I mean, officers are getting prosecuted a lot faster, but we're still not getting the justice that we want. If you've been out here the last couple of days, you can see that we've peacefully been assembling, but they still been like shooting tear gas at us. They've been hitting us with rubber bullets. They got something new. I don't know what they're hitting us with now, but something new they started to hit us with too. At the end of the day, they shouldn't be hitting no citizens with this. Like, they're engaging with us like it's war. Like, what do we do? If they come out right now and tell us to move and start going move, we're gonna move. You know what I mean? If they come out here and they try to arrest us, we're gonna try to stop them from being arrested. But we're not gonna do nothing more than that. You know what I mean? They don't need to be using tear gas on us. They don't need to be using none of the devices that they're using on us. We out here peacefully protesting. They're treating us like it's a civil war. So that's what they're gonna get in the end. I mean, we out here, we're not gonna stop until we get change. We're gonna keep fighting for the families that need justice. The movement is bigger than ever before, it's larger than ever before. We appreciate all the support. I shared a clip of your video last night with the young lady getting arrested, man. And I just thank y'all for supporting everybody, man. We one tight-knit family out here, man. We got to stick together. I know y'all watch this. I know people saying what up to Frank Nitty right now. I think it's dope how you do stuff we can't do. You got your camera, going live with your camera. We out here with our phone. I like it though. For sure. But no, man, you put a lot of work in, bro. You try hard, and I want you to know that it's all love and respect from me. You know what I mean? Black Lives Matter, the movement, BLMM, we out here, man. They're not as aggressive today yet, huh?
Not. So they declared curfew, but they haven't said any unlawful assemblies. People are talking about the police might be getting ready to kennel everybody in this area for a curfew violation. But that's where we're at right now.
Yeah, when I was coming, I did a little patrol when I got some walkie-talkies. But I did a small patrol, and they were blocking off the highways to get here. And they're parked there already. So I think they're gonna try to block all of the ways out. You know what I mean? Possibly, but we got the church though. I asked them for asylum a couple days ago. They've been very generous ever since then. So I've been talking to them back and forth about us being able to be there. Just trying to get organized out here, man, so that they can't just do anything to us. They're not supposed to be kettling us. They're not supposed to be using the stuff they're using on us, but they still are. But I mean, that's what they do. They do whatever they want. They don't listen to anybody. And that's the problem. We need a system that works for us. We need people that work for us. And we're only talking about unreasonable things. You know what I mean? Black people, we want to be treated fairly. We don't want anything more. We don't want to be anything better than anyone else. We want the same treatment as everybody else. You know what I mean? That's it. It's a simple thing. Something that we shouldn't be asking for is something that everybody should get. If you don't believe in that, then...
Can you talk about that a little bit more? Like, just even a black man, and then seeing all these black men sort of lynched on TV at this point.
I mean, think about it like this. Like, we're the shackleless slaves. It's still slavery. You know what I mean? They just took the shackles off. But it's all territorial. They don't want black people to move around. That's what it's about. You ever notice it's always about us being pulled over in our vehicles, stopped in our cars? They want us to be confined into one area of society. They want us to stay in a ghetto. They want us to be stuck in these areas that are marginalized and oppressed. And the way they do that is by putting fear in us so that we don't want to drive our car. Traveling in your vehicle is the most non-racist experience a black person could have. Anywhere else you go out in public, even from the 60s and the 20s and the 30s when we first started buying vehicles, we had to put our money on a bus and get in the back. It was owning a vehicle, being able to travel the road that gave us that sense of freedom where we didn't have to deal with a racist society. And the fact that they want to keep us boxed in, it's no different than slavery before. We might not have shackles on, but the fact that we're still boxed in to these communities, that we're still boxed into these areas where they're trying to make it hard for us to just simply travel from A to B is ridiculous. You know what I mean? And that's why they try so hard to oppress us. It's all about control and power. I mean, even this is about control and power and force. It's mental warfare, man. I rode past the National Guard today, and I felt like we was finna beef. Like real life street beef. People don't understand the psychological warfare they putting us through out here. When you go see the police after you've been out here, after they did what they did, you literally feel like you finna have, like they know you. Like you see the National Guard, you looking like, oh man, I'm finna get into it with them on the street. That's the psychological warfare that happens from being out here, man. It stay with you. It's difficult. You know what I'm saying? But that's why they impose the way they impose. It's just a threat. They don't have no rules, no laws, or nothing to stand behind. So they just impose. That's all they do. Write tickets and give us cases that definitely gonna be dropped. You know what I mean? But we're afraid of that. So then we run, so then we move, we do all these things. But at the end of the day, you got a bunch of people that's not scared. They out here every day. You, me, these people that's out here right now. They're gonna be out here every day fighting for black people. Fighting. And the thing about it is, some people don't understand why we say Black Lives Matter. You think when Martin Luther King fought for black people that other people didn't get rights? You think they're gonna write laws that say for black people? No, it's gonna be laws for all people. That's how we get change for everybody. We get equality for everybody through black people. You get what I'm saying? Once we get change for black people, they're gonna write laws for all people.
Yeah, thank you for that. Can we touch on that real quick?
For sure.
So we had the George Floyd uprising, which led to the largest uprising in
American history, yeah.
Humankind, right? And it was a movement for Black lives. And yet then a Democratic administration comes in, and then they do start making laws, but none of them impact black folks or ability to black folks to get some accountability for crimes that are committed against them. Instead, it's also focused on other, sets of groups. And so, can you talk about that? Because you started.
Yeah, I mean, right. Like, and that's the thing. It's not going to be actual change. All lives can't matter till Black Lives Matter. It's no disrespect to the other groups, but ain't no group hated like black people. You know what I mean? I'm not trying to be disrespectful, but you know what black hate is compared to other hate? Black hate is walking down the street and thinking you a goddamn criminal. Black hate is people crossing the street when they see you. Black hate is people locking their doors. Black hate is people following you around the goddamn stores. No other race experiences that. That's black hate. I don't know what other hate people go through, but that's black hate. We can't walk down the goddamn street. We can't drive in a goddamn car. We're the only race of people that experiences that. And until you fix that, I can't really speak on the other races. All lives can't matter till Black Lives Matter with me. And as we get changed, they're gonna change the laws for everybody. How you think we got there already? Martin Luther King freed everybody when he got those changes made for segregation. It was integration for everybody. It was a lot of groups that wasn't even fighting like that got benefits from the fight that he fought. And that's gonna be the same thing. It's a lot of groups that's not out here now that's still gonna benefit from the fight of black people. Until people realize that this all resides on the most oppressed race, until they realize that until we help black people, that we can't help nobody else, we're gonna continue to have this problem. You know what I mean? It's systematic oppression. Black people don't cause crime. Poor people commit crimes, not black people. Black people, we move to the suburbs, our kids do just like white kids. Go to their school, do just like white kids. We get jobs with them and do just like them. And white people move to our community and act just like black people. They go to jail, they commit crimes, they sell dope, they sell drugs, they go through the same shit they go through. Every race of people that falls into our community go through the same shit we go through. Ain't nothing wrong with black people. It's the system that oppresses us. It's the system that we're in. You never seen two rich people go grab a gun and just run out there and rob somebody. That don't happen. Poor people do that. Because when you poor, it causes mental illness. You have to make decisions that you never would have thought of doing as a human being. It changes everybody. I don't care who you is. Your conditions gonna change you. If you look at where we start, black people are the most successful race in the world from where we start. People get a head start over us. How many people come from the conditions that we come in and rise up? How many other white people that come from our conditions are celebrities? Chinese people, other races of people that come from where we come from, grow up in these communities and rise up. We the only people make it out this shit. We make it from nothing. Everybody else get a head start. That's how powerful we are. But they want to trick the world into thinking that we not. That's the whole trick. If we started where everybody else started, we'll pass everybody up. And the world know that shit. And half the world's scared of that, and the other half of the world celebrating it. Like, you know what, we don't even care about the excellence of black people. We just want them to be treated fairly. The other half of the world, they're afraid of the excellence of black people, and they don't want us to pass them up. If you look at us, we the most loving race of people on the planet Earth. Look how we picked up Asian hate, even though we have a history of Asians hating us. I know women have gotten beaten by Asians, hurry up and buy, in Minister Society. That was a real thing. They used to follow us around the stores. They chastised our women at their nail shops. The Asian community really haven't been down for us like that, but we still support them. We the most loving people ever. We don't support everybody. We don't want to be on top of people. We just want to be treated the same as everybody else so that we can have our opportunity to give back to our own people and make sure that we can rise up and be great as we can be. What other races oppressed like us? What other race rise like us? What other race fight like us? I'm being honest. Nobody. Police do something to a white man, I'm gonna fight for you too. Black people gonna be out here marching. If a white person gets shot, if a Mexican person gets shot by the police, if an Asian person gets shot, we gonna march for all of y'all. Because that's who we are. We fighters. We march for everybody. We fight for the people at the bottom, the most oppressed. And anybody that don't understand that, that's why they're not out here. But you ain't gotta understand. Because the youth, the young people, they get it, and they teaching their kids. The kids get it. The young people get it. They don't want to be like our grandparents. They don't want to keep the tradition going. So it's going to end when they die. That's why we don't care. We going to keep spreading the message, and when they die, it's going to be over. What they thought, they could die and go to hell. It don't even matter. The racism got to die with the racist people, because they never going to respect us. No matter what we say, no matter what we do, that mentality is going to always live inside of them. They got to die with that shit. And we got to rise up a new nation of people and grow our kids up. And white people, this is the last thing I'm going to wrap it up with. We need y'all help because y'all can hold white people accountable. We don't need y'all help as a race. Black people can survive on our own. We don't need white people help as a race. We need y'all to stop fucking with racist white people, okay? That's the only way we're going to get change. Not telling your dad, don't be racist. Stop eating with your fucking dad. Stop talking to your dad if he's gonna be racist. Stop doing business with racist people. Stop going to their stores if they racist. Stop trading with them if they racist. Stop servicing them if they racist. If white people hold racist white people accountable, instead of just educating them, actually stop having a relationship with them, they'll have to change. They'll have to. But as long as they still get white money, as long as white kids still sitting with their racist parents, as long as people still dealing with these racist white folks, then they're gonna continue to be what they are. White people have to hold them accountable. They don't give a fuck what we say. You can have conversations with people that have never talked to me. That's just the truth. And if you stop doing business with white people that need white people business, eventually they'll change. That's pretty much it. But until we get those things done, we can't do nothing. My name Frank Nitty. I ain't gonna take up your whole stream. It's a lot going on out here. Y'all know I'll talk forever. Love to my people. For sure. Love my brother. Shout out to the Minnesota family. For sure, bro. It's real out here, bro. I don't just be, for sure, bro. I love you too, bro. We all love each other, bro. This is the only place in the world where you can be yourself. You come out here with a fucking shield and ain't nobody gonna judge you. That's why people be out here. Because this is the only place in the goddamn world you can be yourself. And then when people leave here, they gotta go back to the ugly society of life that's segregated, that's racist, that treat everybody funny, that look at us all weird. Out here, everybody the same. No matter what color you is, if some pizza come, it's whoever go over there and get it. Ain't nobody first. If something come out here, it's whoever get it. We all treated the same out here. And people love it out here. That's why we come out here. And when we go back to the real world, it's ugly. We got to go back to that society that oppresses us, that look at us all like we weirdos. If we want to dress a certain way, if we want to look a certain way, if we want to have tattoos in a certain place. But out here, this is real freedom. This is no judgment. This is what the new world look like. That's why everybody needs to come out here and join us. Even if we don't get these people to understand what we're going through, we understand each other. And the equality and the love that we feel out here with each other is a love you'll never feel nowhere else. Come out here and march and support these people in Minnesota. For real.
Thank you all for joining us. This is Dan at Unicorn Riot. Really appreciate your support. We're waiting for court to come back any moment now. They should be coming back in. It's about 3:15 in the afternoon right now. So if you can support our work by going to unicornriot.ninja, that makes a big difference. And let your friends know what we're up to, sort of pass our material around. That also is really helpful. So we've got a Kim Potter trial landing page. Our newest stories are there up at the top. All the coverage we did down at Charlottesville is right below that, which was a pretty big undertaking because in federal court, some people were sort of wondering about federal court, the Ghislaine Maxwell case. Federal court doesn't allow this kind of AV access. They do sometimes have a call-in. Here's the judge. We'll go back.
Okay, thank you, Deputy. All right, please be seated. The state may call its next witness.
This time the state calls Eric Koepen.
Okay, good afternoon. Please stand in back of the witness chair. Raise your right hand. Do you swear under penalty of perjury that you will truthfully testify?
I do.
Please have a seat. Remove your mask. And then state your full name and spell it.
My name is Eric Koepen, and last name is spelled Koeppen.
Okay, a couple of things to keep in mind when you're testifying. Yes or no answers because of the court reporter. No or nodding your head.
Sounds good. Thank you.
If there's an objection, stop talking immediately and don't answer unless I tell you to. If you don't understand a question, let the lawyer know. And two people can't be talking at the same time. So wait until the question's finished before you answer.
Okay.
All right. Counsel?
Mr. Koepen, could you state your occupation for the record?
I work as a forensic scientist in the biology section of the BCA laboratory.
How long have you been employed in the biology section of the BCA?
I've been employed there since February 2017.
About 4.5 years then?
That is correct.
And what are your current duties in the biology section?
As a forensic scientist, we examine items of evidence, process that item of evidence for any sort of biological fluid, do examinations, take notes on that item, make any collections. We'll then process that item for DNA profiling, make any comparisons to known samples provided in that case, write up a report, do reviews on other scientists' work, and then testify in court as needed.
What is your educational background to do such things?
In 2013, I graduated from Hamlin University with a Bachelor's of Science in Biology. I also graduated with a Forensic Science Certificate from Hamlin in 2013 as well.
Have you received any specialized training since your employment at the BCA?
Yes. Upon my employment at the BCA, we are placed into a training program. This takes about a year. You are expected to observe other scientists in the laboratory, attend classroom lectures, perform written and oral examinations, and then complete a competency test at the end of our training.
And are you after that competency test, are you evaluated regularly to verify your proficiency in conducting your work?
Yes. We take what are called proficiency tests. Those are twice a year. They're used to kind of examine our workflow and make sure that we get the correct results of the test.
And you've testified as an expert before, correct?
That is correct.
All right. Now, before we talk about the DNA testing you performed in this case, would you please explain to the jury quickly what DNA is?
So DNA is a chemical or a molecule that's found within the cells. It kind of is the makeup of who we are as a person. It gives you your hair color, your eye color, things of that nature. It's highly unique to certain individuals besides twins.
Is it possible to identify, besides twins, the DNA of a particular person?
Yes, it is.
When you identify the DNA of a particular person, do you have a name for that result?
We would call that a match.
A match. Oh, I'm sorry, but just the actual, what's it called, DNA profile? Is that of an individual? Is that what that's called?
At the end of our testing, we do obtain, yes, a DNA profile.
Profile of a specific individual, for example.
Of an individual, or generally after the end of our testing, it's an unknown profile until we make our comparisons.
Okay. Now, is it possible then to distinguish the DNA profile of one person from the DNA profile of another person?
That is correct.
Okay. Now, is it possible to compare the DNA of a known donor with the DNA found in an unknown sample containing DNA to determine whether that person's DNA matches the DNA profile found in the sample?
Yes, sir.
Is that sort of the middle of the road, what you do on a daily basis, sir?
Yes, I could agree with that.
What is a single source DNA profile?
So a single source profile is one that we determine to be coming from a single individual. We determine this since you get half of your DNA from your mother and half of your DNA from your father. At most, at the locations that we're testing, we would expect 2 types. If there are more than 2 types at the location, then we can call that a mixture of DNA.
So when you do have 2 single source DNA profiles, given the unique nature of them, are you able to determine if those 2 profiles are a match or not a match?
Yes.
Okay. What other types of DNA results do you expect to find besides a single source result?
Like I stated earlier, we do end up getting mixtures of DNA where there's multiple contributors to that sample. There are often times where we get samples that we're unable to make any sort of identification to.
Is testing a sample of blood recovered from a scene something you do on a regular basis?
Yes, it is.
Are you typically able to recover DNA from swabbing the blood sample?
Yes.
And when you test blood samples, are they typically single source profiles?
Yes.
But they could be mixtures.
That is correct.
All right. And you'll be able to determine that whether it's a single source or a mixture based on the DNA profile you receive, correct?
Correct. During our interpretation is when we'd be making that determination if it's a single source or a mixture.
Okay, I just want to move now on to the testing that you perform at the BCA. Based on your training and experience, do you have an opinion as to whether or not the DNA testing methods used at the BCA are generally accepted in the scientific community?
Yes, they are.
Does the BCA have a particular protocol or methodology that is used when performing DNA testing?
Yes.
Okay. And can you explain briefly the DNA testing policy?
Yes.
Or process, I should
process,
say.
Sure. DNA profiling is done generally into 4 steps. The first step is extraction. We'll get a sample subjected to certain chemicals to help break up the cellular material and release that DNA into a solution. We'll then purify that solution to get that extract of DNA, so that purified DNA. This will bring us to our next step, which is quantitation. We'll see how much DNA is present within that extract and see if it's suitable to move forward in the profiling process. If it does meet a certain threshold, it moves forward to the next step, which is called amplification. We'll be targeting certain areas of that DNA for identification purposes, and we'll be focusing on those areas, making millions upon millions of copies of that area or those areas. And then once that is completed, the final step is interpretation, where that basically that sample is injected into our instrumentation. A profile is then generated. We'll then basically visualize that profile and make our interpretations.
Okay. Now I have a couple of questions about items which are collected and inventoried at the BCA. When an item is collected, are they typically given both a BCA lab item number and a description of what the item actually is?
Yes. When items are submitted, they're given a BCA lab item number, as well as a description that's provided by the agency.
So if you take an item out of the vault, you're going to have an opportunity to see both the item's lab number and then that description of the item.
Generally, the description is not written on the item itself. However, it is in our laboratory information management system, so I'll be able to see that on the computer, yes.
Okay. And those numbers and descriptions typically would be provided by the scientist or agent who collected or inventoried those items, correct?
That is correct.
All right. And those numbers and descriptions, do you utilize those when you issue a report about your findings?
Yes.
Okay. And that's done obviously to aid anyone reading it?
That is correct.
All right. Now I want to move on to the testing you did in this case. Did you generate a report documenting the testing that you performed?
Yes, I did.
Were certain items of evidence in connection with this investigation inventoried at the lab?
Yes.
Did that include a blood stain or sample from a known individual named Daunte Wright?
Yes.
And that blood stain was identified as BCA item 30?
That is correct.
Were there also a series of swabs taken from blood droplets located in this case?
Yes, sir.
And of the items, would you agree that based on the item number and the description provided to you, they are the following? Item 22, that's blood from the vehicle's driver's seat. Item 25, blood from the vehicle's front passenger dashboard. Item 26, blood from a vehicle's passenger side headliner. And then item 27, blood from the vehicle's rear driver's seat.
Yes.
All right. So you obtained those swabs to conduct testing on them.
That is correct.
And did the swab, the known swab of Daunte Wright, give you a full DNA profile?
Yes, it did.
And were you able to obtain separate DNA profiles from those 4 swabs of blood?
Yes.
Okay. And of those 4 DNA profiles, am I correct that each one was a single source DNA profile?
Yes, you are correct.
All right. Did you compare the DNA profile from each blood sample to the DNA profile of Daunte Wright?
Yes, I did.
Okay. And are you prepared here to report the result for each?
Yes.
All right. Let's start with the first one. Item 22, blood from the driver's seat. What was the result of your testing?
So blood from the driver's seat, item 22, was a single source male DNA profile. That male profile matched Mr. Wright's, and that profile would not be expected to occur more than once among unrelated individuals in the world population.
Okay. Next, item 25, that's the blood from the vehicle's front passenger dashboard. What was your result there?
So from the front vehicle dashboard to passenger side, it was a single source profile. It was an unidentified female profile. It did not match Mr. Wright's, and there were no further comparisons on that profile.
Were you provided any DNA samples from any other known individuals?
No, I was not.
So you had no DNA profile from an individual named Delana Albrecht Payton?
No, I was not.
Okay. Item 26, blood found on the front, the passenger side headliner.
Item 26 was also a single source male DNA profile. That single source profile matched Mr. Wright's, and once again, that profile is not expected to occur more than once among unrelated individuals in the world population.
And then item 27, blood from a vehicle's rear driver's seat.
Item 27 was a single source male DNA profile, matched Mr. Wright's, would not be expected to occur more than once among unrelated individuals in the world population.
Okay. I'm now going to show you a series of photographs already admitted as evidence in this case. Could you please show Exhibit 191? I'm showing you Exhibit 191. Do you see the sticker on there which states 22?
Yes, I do.
Okay. Could you go to the next Exhibit 192? And you'd agree that there's a sticker on the front seat there that says 22?
Yes.
All right. And based on your training and experience, to what would you conclude that this 22 corresponds?
This number 22 corresponds to item 22, which I previously reported.
Okay. And that report was that it was a match of Daunte Wright's DNA profile?
That is correct.
Okay. Next, please show Exhibit 193. And then move on to Exhibit 194. Would you agree that Exhibit 194 shows an I-25?
Yes, sir.
Based on your training experience, would you say that this corresponds to the item number 25 that you tested?
Yes.
And this was the DNA profile that was a match for an unidentified female?
It was an unidentified female.
Okay. Exhibit 195. And then, can you see the item 26 on the roof of that vehicle, sir?
Yes, I can.
Okay. And then go to Exhibit 196. And based on your training experience, do you believe that this was the lab item number you tested? That was number 26?
Yes.
And am I right? The result of your testing showed that blood was also a match for Daunte Wright's DNA profile?
That is correct.
Okay. And then finally, please show Exhibit 197. And then move to 198. I'm showing you an item, if you could zoom in on that, Mr. Miller. I'm showing you Exhibit 198. Would you agree, if we close up there, that it shows item number 27?
Yes.
And based on your training experience, are you to believe that that is a match for the, that is the blood sample that you tested as lab item number 27?
Yes.
And that too was a match for Daunte Wright's DNA profile? Correct?
That is correct.
All right. You can take that down. So to summarize your findings, of those 4 blood items, 3 of them were a match for Daunte Wright, and that 4th one on the passenger dashboard was from an unknown female DNA profile. Right?
That is correct.
Okay. No further questions.
You may step down. The state may call its next witness.
This time the state calls Travis Melland.
Good afternoon. Please step forward. Stand behind the witness chair. And raise your right hand. Do you swear under penalty of perjury that you will truthfully testify in connection with this trial?
I do.
Please have a seat. Remove your mats, please, and then state your full name and spell it.
Travis Melland, Melland.
All right. There's a court reporter taking down everything that is being said in the courtroom. Yes or no instead of shaking your head, right? No, uh-huh, or uh-uh. Wait until the question's finished before you answer, so 2 people are not speaking at the same time. If an objection is made, stop talking. Don't answer it unless I tell you to. Okay? And if you don't understand a question, of course, let the lawyer know. All right? Counsel?
Mr. Melland, could you please state your occupation for the record?
I'm a forensic scientist for the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension.
How long have you worked for the Bureau of Criminal Apprehension Crime Lab?
For approximately 6 years now.
Could you discuss your current duties with the crime lab?
Sure. My current duties are to compare ammunition components found at a scene to each other or to a firearm if it was recovered.
And how many years have you been doing that sort of work in the firearms lab?
I've been with the firearms lab for about 5 years now.
Okay. Could you discuss your education and training to conduct such comparative analysis?
Yes, first I earned my Bachelor of Science in Forensic Biochemistry back in 2014. Once hired at the BCA in the Firearms Laboratory, we go through a year-long extensive training module in which we learn about the different makes and models of firearms, their history, how they operate, and then also with ammunition components and how they interact with those different firearms. And then we go through and hundreds of different ammunition components and gain that cognitive ability, what constitutes an identification versus an elimination from a firearm.
Okay. And as part of the BCA's yearly evaluation process, are you evaluated regularly every year to verify your proficiency in this sort of work?
Yes, we go through annual proficiency tests in the firearms lab.
And have you testified in court as an expert before?
Yes, I have.
Okay. I'd like to talk generally about the background underlying firearms examinations. When an individual loads a semi-automatic firearm with ammunition, do you have a name for that type of ammunition, for a live round of ammunition?
Oh, yeah, a live round would be considered a cartridge.
Okay. What are the components? What are the component parts of a cartridge?
So a cartridge is comprised of a projectile, commonly a bullet, with a propellant or the gunpowder inside, an ignition source, which would be the primer end of the cartridge, all housed within a metal casing.
Okay. And the casing being the fourth, right?
Casing is the fourth part, correct.
All right. Now, when the gun fires, what happens to the component parts of the cartridge?
So when a semi-automatic firearm is discharged, the primer portion, which contains the ignition source of the cartridge, is struck by the firing pin, it creates an impression on that cartridge case, and then creates an exponential amount of gas and pressure. This allows the bullet to then travel down the barrel and out the muzzle of the firearm, picking up rifling characteristics from that firearm, as well as pressing against the breech face or the rear end of the firearm as well, before it is then ejected from the firearm.
Okay. When you conduct a firearms comparison, what items or components are you typically examining and comparing as part of your work?
Typically, we are looking at cartridge cases and bullets.
Okay. How does the examination of discharged cartridge casings and fired bullets enable you to draw conclusions about the use of specific firearms?
So when a firearm is discharged and those components interact with that firearm, it picks up markings from that firearm that we can use and look at under a comparative microscope to make an identification or elimination or some conclusion.
Okay. Can you explain to the jury what class characteristics and individual characteristics are?
Yes. So class characteristics are those that are predetermined by the manufacturer. For example, these include the caliber or the size of ammunition that the firearm takes, the size of the rifling or the grooves cut inside the barrel, the directionality of the rifling of the barrel, along with the firing pin shape, the shape of the aperture in which the firing pin goes through on the firearm, and as well as the finishing of the breech face that the cartridge case will press up against as well. If any one of these class characteristics differ, we can eliminate those components from being fired from that particular firearm. Individual characteristics are incidental to the manufacturing process and are more of the microscopic detail that are created through the manufacturing process, but also through the use, abuse, wear, and tear of the firearm itself.
Okay. And in terms of individual characteristics then, does comparing these enable you to draw conclusions about when a specific firearm was used?
Correct. We use individual characteristics for our conclusions.
Okay. I want to zero in just on discharged cartridge casings. I think you've talked about where specific markings are left on these cartridges when they're fired and ejected. Because of those marks left on the discharged cartridge casings, that's how you can compare and identify when they're ejected from a particular firearm?
That's correct.
Okay. And you can compare two discharged cartridge casings which are fired from different guns?
Yes, we could.
Okay. And that's using your sort of comparison microscope?
That's correct.
Okay. Now, let's say you only recover a single discharged cartridge casing and a single firearm. Are you able to somehow evaluate whether the discharged cartridge casing was fired from the gun?
Yes, we are.
Okay. Could you explain to the jury how that's done?
So we evaluate the firearm for those class characteristics. If all the class characteristics are in line with what we're seeing on our evidence cartridge case, then we can move on to test firing that firearm. And then we collect cartridge cases that we know of came from that firearm, as well as bullets during this process. Then we can physically compare the cartridge case known from the firearm to the evidence cartridge case collected at the scene.
Okay, so you do eventually do sort of an apples and apples comparison against discharged cartridge casings. It's just that you know the test fired one came from a particular firearm. Is that about right?
That is correct.
All right. Now, when you conduct your work on a given case, does your work go through a verification process?
Yes, it does.
Okay. And that requires another forensic scientist to examine your work and to evaluate your conclusions?
Correct. Another examiner trained and also signed off in the same discipline will verify our conclusions.
Okay. So that's discharged cartridge casings. Now let's talk about fired bullets. If you only have a fired bullet and a particular firearm, do you have to go through a comparable test firing and recover a test fired bullet to conduct a comparison?
Yes, similar to cartridge cases, we'll evaluate for class characteristics, and then if those are in alignment, then we go through and test fire, and we'll compare those known bullets from the firearm to the bullets if they were collected at the scene.
Sure. And this question might be just 1 + 1 is 2, but if you have a single bullet, single firearm, and a single discharged cartridge casing, you can compare all three items together, correct?
We only compare to a firearm. There's no way for us to compare a particular bullet from coming from a particular cartridge case.
You need the firearm for the test-fired bullet and the DCC, right?
That is correct.
Okay, I want to move on to the testing you did in this case. Did you receive a request to examine evidence?
Yes, it was.
And was that request made by Agent Mike Phil?
Yes, it was.
All right. With regard to the work performed here, were you asked to retrieve certain items of evidence which had been collected and inventoried at the BCA?
Yes.
Okay. Of the items, am I correct that you obtained 3 items?
That's correct.
All right. And when you obtained those items, they were assigned a lab number?
That is correct.
All right. And you generated a report based on your work in this case, correct?
And that is correct.
All right. And those 3 items that you got were item 7, that was a single 9mm discharge cartridge casing that was collected by Melissa Lauren. Item 13, which is a Glock 7 9mm firearm, which was item number 13. And then item 31, a projectile or fired bullet, item 31. Is that correct?
That does sound correct.
Okay. So the purposes of your testimony today, we can agree that you got a single discharge cartridge case and a single bullet and then the firearm.
That's correct.
And you were asked to compare them.
That's correct.
Okay. Now before we talk about your results, I just want to make sure that we're talking about the same items. Permission to approach the witness, Your Honor. Mr. Melland, I'm showing you exhibits 199, 202, and 200. I'll show them to you each. I'm showing you exhibit 200. Would you agree that is the discharge cartridge casing?
Yes, it is.
Exhibit 202. What? Pardon me. Item 201. You recognize this as the fired bullet?
Yes, I do.
And then exhibit 199. Exhibit Crammel item number 13. You recognize this as the firearm?
Yes, I do.
Were you able to compare the discharge cartridge casing to the firearm?
Yes, I was.
Did you follow the same method and procedure that you discussed a few minutes ago?
Yes, I did.
And what was your result?
I concluded that the fired cartridge case and the bullet covering the scene were fired by the firearm in this case.
I'm sorry, you might have went beyond my question. I just asked about the discharge cartridge casing. Did you also make a similar conclusion about the fired bullet?
My apologies. Yes, I did.
Okay. So in the end, your findings are that that firearm fired the DCC and fired the fired bullet in this case.
That's correct.
All right. Now, I have a couple additional questions about the firearm. Did you conduct an examination of the firearm as to its functionality?
Yes, I did.
All right. And did you confirm that it was functional?
Yes, I did.
As part of your examination, were you able to examine an aspect of the firearm called trigger pull?
Yes, I was.
What is trigger pull?
In short, the trigger pull is the force necessary to pull the trigger or fire the gun.
All right. There's a phrase some laymen use, dropping the hammer. Have you heard of this phrase?
Yeah, more commonly with revolvers. But
Okay.
yes.
Well, that's what we're talking about. How much weight does it take to fire the gun?
That's correct.
Can you tell? Can you measure how that is? How much weight that takes?
Yes, we can.
Could you describe for the jury how that's done?
So we have a static weight apparatus in which we can hang known weights and poundages and hang that off of the trigger of a firearm. We measure to a point of which we can lift up on the firearm and not have the trigger get depressed consistently, and then also keep adding weight until we're consistently getting the trigger to depress, and we create a range of what that trigger pull would be.
Now, is there a typical range for force required to pull the trigger of any firearm? Typical range?
Yes, in my experience, anywhere between 3 and 9 pounds is fairly average.
Okay, so in this case, were you able to measure the trigger pull of Exhibit 199?
Yes, I was.
Right. And what were the results there?
It was approximately 5.5 to 6 pounds.
Okay, so within the normal range.
That is correct.
Okay, no further questions, Your Honor.
Mr. Cross? Oh, you may step down.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Okay, there's no further witnesses this afternoon.
Okay. All right. Okay, members of the jury, we're going to stop early today, okay, and we'll start up at 9 o'clock. All right. I want to assure you that we're still on schedule, okay. All right. So have a great evening.
So if anyone has questions, after the judge is done, I can try to answer questions if I have the answers. You can throw them in the chat on Facebook or YouTube.
Okay, counsel, please be seated. All right. The state filed 2 motions. I'm wondering whether the defense wishes to put in a written motion or just do oral argument on them. Okay. All right. Let's start up at 9 o'clock. I'll review the state's motions tonight, and maybe we can discuss them tomorrow. Okay? Is there anything else we need to put on the record?
On the record, no, but the state does wish to be heard in chambers with regard to an issue.
Right now?
Yes, Your Honor.
Okay. Come on back. I don't know.
Thank you all for joining us. This is Dan at Unicorn Riot. We really appreciate everyone tuning in today. The court is ending a little earlier than we might have expected because they just sort of got through all of the different witnesses. So that's the end of day 8. I just wanted to underscore, some of the chatters are just kind of wondering, what is the point of this? Why do we have to hear about the bullet? Why do we have to hear about the forensics of checking these things? It's important to realize that the state has to eliminate reasonable doubt, right? If they didn't prove that bullet matched, Kim Potter's gun, then the defense could say the state didn't even prove that it was the bullet, and things like that. And so, oh boy, make sure I didn't want anyone to get blasted with the audio. So, one moment, please. So that's why the state has to go through these steps of answering these questions. So I just kind of wanted to kind of highlight that because, some people might say, oh, why is this, irrelevant or whatever, but these are the steps they have to go through. It isn't how they show it on a show like Law and Order. It's just like, that's how they have to lay out their case, establish elements of the case, proving forensically all of those different links. So I think that's important to realize and sort of set your expectations that kind of way. Someone's asking, what's the average sentence for an accidental shooting convicted case? That's a great question. I don't know the answer for that one in Minnesota. If anyone happens to know out there, the average sentence for, manslaughter cases, sentences in Minnesota, I would certainly be curious. I'm sure it depends on what degree of manslaughter, for sure. If there's any other questions, I can sort of hang in there for a couple minutes. Besides that, I'll just kind of recap quickly. Just that there were people from the BCA, which is the state level Bureau of Criminal Apprehension. It's kind of like Minnesota's equivalent of the FBI. They sort of have, as you can see, these personnel that sort of assess different things when there are officer shootings like this. They also certainly do investigations. They look after things like the gang databases. Going back years, I've been to hearings at the BCA, and I learned a lot about how the gang database system works in Minnesota, which definitely has some pretty serious elements of racial bias, there was a lot of controversy. There was a gang net. There were a lot of different controversies about how people got listed or indexed as gang members, and so that was my most thorough exposure to the BCA. Was a bunch of hearings a long time ago about that subject. I think it was back around 2010. So that was so that's important. You know, it's important to understand the BCA doesn't just investigate things like this. They also, deal with stuff like gang databases and saying who's a gang member. That's been one of the historical things. So a couple of different people have commented saying that the maximum in Minnesota is 15 years, but usually ends up around 7. Someone asked their mom, who's a lawyer, and they said 12 to 15 years. And so I think that's the ballpark to answer Macman's question in YouTube. We got the answer over to you from Facebook. So, that's sort of these are all ballpark numbers, but the maximum, I believe that's correct what someone else is saying. The maximum first degree is 15 years. So we do, and we know, yes, it's 15 max for the first degree and 10 max for the second degree. Thank you, Nico, for pulling that up. We do have it linked in our post on the landing page. Let me just pull that up for you really quick to show you guys how to pull up that document. So if you go to the Kim Potter trial landing page on our website, unicornriot.ninja, then we go down here. I'm having a little trouble with this window, so I can't go into it. The trial landing page is right there. I can't take you to it at this moment, but there it is. And you can see the charging sheet, which, lists the defendant and the counts. So computer's a little tangled up. Can't bring it up for you right now. So let's see. I don't think we have anything else right now to try to answer, but you can take a look at the trial landing page. Again, if you could support our work, if you could donate, we've had multiple people working on this on the daily. And so we are a nonprofit. We do depend on people's contributions to kind of keep bringing out stories to the folks, bringing the information out to everyone. And the case files are on the landing page there if you want to look at that, so you can see the charging sheets for what the maximum sentences are. But the question was kind of what was the average, and the charging sheets don't exactly sort of say what the average is in the state. I just sort of wanted to clarify that. Besides that, I didn't really have too much for questions right now. So let's see. Again, I'll just, thanks Alex for working hard on looking after the live trial updates today. So that's on Unicorn Riot Live, because again, it is traumatic material. There was a lot of blood today. It's a disturbing subject area. Of course, you can see it there. So, if you just kind of want to get a written version of this and not kind of be subjective to this pretty tense and disturbing, kind of exhausting material, you can follow the trial updates there through the Twitter account. So let's see. 1 second. Yeah, so I think that's about all we have for the moment. So I'm just going to take the stream down. Again, we will be back tomorrow morning. I think Nico is going to be driving tomorrow. So thank you all for joining. I think we're gonna have some news stories popping up on the website. So keep an eye on that. We'll have more things coming down the pike shortly. We're always very busy churning through everything, bringing you more content. So thank you all for joining us. Please follow our accounts on Facebook, on Twitter, on Vimeo, on YouTube. Now we have 2 Twitters. So, I really thank you all for that. Okay, so a last second question is, why does the blood evidence matter? Because all of the reasonable doubt has to be kind of broken down, right? The defense is trying to make reasonable doubts. That guides their strategy. And so the state has to, lay out all the evidence as concretely as possible, as much of a foundation as possible. And so that's why you see them stepping through things that might not seem to be at the center of the case, but they're little sort of side things which any one of which could kind of create a chain of reasonable doubt, a set of reasonable doubt, and they have to try to break those down. That's what the state is really trying to do. We saw lots of objections. We saw today in particular that the Judge Chu, doesn't want to be introducing image stills. She said that the state hadn't sent the image stills to the defense, even though these image stills are from videos that are admitted that the defense has had for a long time. And so I thought that was sort of interesting because it's like, well, a video is a sequence of images with an audio track on it. I think I heard the defense accuse the state of having videos that were 1 second off or mismatched. Sometimes you've seen videos where multiple ones are tracked. From our analysis, sometimes the frame rates are kind of strange in the videos, sort of an odd inconsistency or whatever. So, because again, we're stepping through videos, and there was this whole, extended thing about still images. Sort of, the state was wanting the special agent to kind of explain what was happening. The defense is trying to say, "Oh, Officer Johnson is going to get dragged away in the car." That was a big part of like the state's or the defense's argument is that, "Oh, Johnson being dragged away in the car justifies what Potter did, so it wasn't reckless what she did because of this." Like that was definitely a big element of what the defense was going for today. That was a big piece in the thing. Okay, here's another good question. Why is the defense so stuck on marijuana, and what will their defense be once the drug defense fails? Again, that's a great question. So we covered the Philando Castile case very closely. That was very traumatic. When that happened, most of that got streamed on Facebook Live. Geronimo Yanez shot Philando Castile, and Geronimo Yanez told the BCA that he was feared for his life because he smelled marijuana, because he thought it was such a deadly thing for the people in the car to be exposed to. And so therefore he, killed this man because of the smell of marijuana, essentially. However, that transcript was withheld from the jury. Only snippets of it were able to be introduced by the prosecution. So Earl Grey was able to go deep into this, marijuana police paranoia defense successfully in the Philando Castile case. That is how he managed to plant those doubts, win the case, along with other things. But that was a key part of it. So Earl Grey is right back on that same track. And there's a lot more that could be said about the role of the war on drugs and policing, specifically in Minnesota. It's been such a strong element. But with Earl Grey and Philando Castile, Geronimo Yanez, that's the most prominent example. So that is something I do want to mention to Antoinette's question in Facebook, was that we can look directly to the Philando Castile case and Earl Grey for understanding that better. So I think that's definitely a very significant element. So I think that's it. And yes, to Tommy O on YouTube, thanks for your support on the Line 3 case. Again, if you want to take a look at Line 3, that's a link. It's a link farther down there on the front page. We've been covering the pipeline protests, things of that nature, and you can jump to the landing page on the website right down there on the front if you want to check that out. So we really appreciate your support. Helping push our stories out there is really very appreciated. So thank you all for tuning in. We're going to take the stream down. And again, thank you so much to Nico for working on the clips and kind of the back end and updating the trial page during the day. And thank you so much to Alex on the live tweets as well. We really appreciate your support, everyone. And stay tuned and let your friends know what we're up to. Thank you all.